Live from the nation's capital, in fact, right within shouting distance of the Supreme Court, right across the street. You're in the War Room. Thursday, the 12th of November, year of our Lord 2020, episode 495. Now the 18th largest podcast in the nation in every category, and also 47th in the world with almost 19 million downloads. And of course, millions of viewers every day on cable and streaming. John Fredericks Radio Network, Real America's Voice, Newsmax TV, G News, GTV, simultaneously broadcast in Mandarin, blown through the firewall into mainland China and through the diaspora throughout the world, the Chinese citizens looking to be free. I want to thank everybody, but not even doing a cold open today because we're too jammed with guests. I want to bring in now, really, it's such an American story, right? A guy running the Great Lakes Justice Center that defends First Amendment, Second Amendment, is a big right-to-life defender, and just a fantastic story. Has one of the most serious lawsuits with all the federal suits. We have one in state court in Michigan. As we say in the Twitterverse, he has the receipts. He actually has great affidavits and witnesses of people that were trained to cheat. And it's Dave, and we call him Dave Five Stones Kallman, right? This is a David versus Goliath story. So David Five Stones, and the reason I want you to summarize your case, because nobody wanted to talk about this a couple of days ago. I want to summarize your case, and then I want to go to, we had the War Room team actually sit in the hearing with the judge yesterday, and the biggest takeaway, ladies and gentlemen, is that the Team Biden legal is not ready. They're already whining, they're pearl clutchers, right? Biden's a soft target. We said this during the hard drive from hell, which we're going to get back to in a couple of days. They're not the Clintons. They don't know how to go to the mattresses, right? They're trying to steal this election, and they're soft. Biden's soft. Ron Klain's soft. The people around him are soft. His legal team is soft. And you saw it yesterday in a state court in Michigan. So, Dave, can you summarize your case, and then I want to talk about the specifics of your day in court yesterday.
Sure. Thanks for having me on, Steve. Our case is really pretty simple. We had just ordinary people who were in to be poll challengers. They were trained. They had a right under our state law to be there and observe the counting of the ballots from the election. And they were there, and what they saw was just astounding to them. And it was fraud happening right in front of their eyes. And they felt they had to speak out. Jessie Jacob started all of this. She's an employee of the city of Detroit, works for the elections division, and observed so many different things. They're in the affidavits. I know we talked some about it yesterday. But she came forward and signed an affidavit. And then once the word got out, we had other people start coming forward. Zach Larson, who's an attorney in Michigan. He was also an assistant Michigan attorney general, Steve, for 8 years under both Republican and Democrat administrations. This guy's credentials are impeccable. And he observed direct fraud, ballots being assigned to different names on the computer. And he observed this. And then we got other affidavits, which are attached to our complaint. So what we did was we filed this lawsuit. And under Michigan law, we had to file in Wayne County. And it involves a number of different things, but here it is in a nutshell. Our Michigan Constitution has a new clause from just 2 years ago that allows residents and voters to request an audit of any election to determine the accuracy and the integrity of the election. And it's an audit of the results, not an audit of like a process audit of just the ballots, were they done right or did they have technical errors. This is a results audit, which is really different. And so we're asking for that. And we, I think, are the first ones in Michigan to bring a lawsuit requesting relief under this new constitutional amendment. Secondly, we brought action 2 counts for quo warranto. Don't want to get in the legal weeds here. That's usually used to throw somebody out of office that they're not properly in, like somebody moves out of a district or things like that, and you bring that action. But there is in Michigan the right to bring a quo warranto action for election fraud specifically. So we are bringing those counts also. And then we have equal protection, constitutional arguments. And finally, we have many, many statutory violations. And this is where you get into the issues, Steve, about how they were kicking out people like Mr. Larson. Once he saw the fraud and what was going on and he complained and he went out of the room to confer with other lawyers and then to come back, they wouldn't let him back in. and they were kicking out Republican poll challengers all over the place and would not let them back in. So there was all kinds of shenanigans and threats and hostility. We're in the process right now of getting an affidavit from a poll challenger who witnessed an election worker threatening a poll challenger essentially with a knife. It was a long letter opener, and wielding it like a knife and waving it at him, telling him to back up and get away from him. Well, you can't do your job as a poll challenger when you're being threatened to be stabbed, and let alone you can't observe what's going on. You can't see anything. It was just outrageous what was going on, Steve. So that's our lawsuit in a nutshell, and that's what our hearing was about yesterday.
Okay, I want to go just to the lawsuit. Are the people that sign these affidavits understand that the whole world is going to come crashing down on them, and it's going to be just like this postal union guy up in Erie that we're going to try to get into the story today with McCabe and the guys at Veritas so we can do it. But that the whole world's going to come down on Zach Larson and Jesse Jacoby, that they're going to be torn apart and threatened and their livelihood threatened, their families threatened. They're going to dox them. Do they understand what they're in for?
They sure do, and we talked at length with them about that, especially Jesse. I think Zach Larson has a good idea. He's a smart attorney. He knew what he was doing, but he felt he had a moral obligation and a legal obligation to come forward and do what he's doing. Jesse, I mean, look, she's a mom. She's of ethnic background. She's Indian. They're from India. She's worked for the city of Detroit for over 30 years. She's got a great family. They're Catholic background. And she's just got a conscience, and when it came right down to it, and we had that discussion, Steve, about are you willing to face what may happen here? She just said, well, I have to do what's right. And I'll tell you, I so admire her and her courage to be able to stand up, and Zach Larson, and frankly, all the other people who signed these affidavits for us. These are incredibly brave Americans. They really are.
Yesterday in court, there were some issues about the affidavits. I know you're getting that worked out and all sorted, but the biggest and most important thing was I was shocked that the Biden legal team, and I'm not a lawyer, but I listen to a lot of the stuff and follow it closely. I was shocked that the Biden legal team was, one, not ready, two, kind of dismissive, three, a little shocked when they saw what you had, and four, started whining pretty quickly. And particularly when you start talking about audits and you start talking about law that I didn't think they were familiar with. And they sit there and start whining about the because we try to teach nomenclature here in the war room, whatever topic we take on, the certification process and certifying these votes. Walk us through what you felt of the Biden legal basically comeback to your challenge yesterday.
Well, I think they were relying too much on maybe some of the earlier cases. This particular judge, Judge Kenney, had a case last week where someone had challenged some of the actions that were happening at the TCF Center in Detroit and had denied the motion and denied the request. But see, the issue comes down here, Steve, is to the type of evidence you have. And apparently in that other case, all they had were some generalities, a lot of hearsay, no specifics in what they were alleging. And of course, we do our homework. We do the groundwork. We're not going to file a lawsuit unless we have solid evidence. And so when one of the attorneys yesterday said, well, these are just affidavits full of hearsay. I mean, what a softball. I mean, all I had to say was, well, that's an interesting take on what is hearsay. I didn't know that direct observational evidence, eyewitness evidence, is hearsay. I mean, that's almost the definition of non-hearsay. And we have a lot of people sitting in prison right now based on eyewitness accounts, and they saw somebody commit a crime. I mean, that's just ludicrous to say that's hearsay. And then they throw out some of these terms like, oh, this is conspiracy theories and things like that. And I just say to them, I said to the judge yesterday, and I say to everybody watching right now, go to our website, look at the complaint, look at the affidavits, and you decide for yourself whether or not you think this is just a bunch of hearsay. I mean, this is not Aunt Harriet telling Uncle Joe that my cousin down the street told me that something happened. I mean, that's hearsay. We're so far removed from that, it's ridiculous.
The disturbing thing about Jesse Jacoby, it looks like look. Don't let me put. But is this systemic fraud and systemic cheating? Were they actually trying to train the workers themselves and to do this in an organized fashion? Is that how I am to interpret her affidavit?
Yes, absolutely, Steve. You're absolutely right. And when they were coaching people coming in, even before the election, people in Michigan, you can come in and vote at the clerk's office and things like that. And they have a voting booth set up. And how they would, Miss Jacob observed the workers telling people who to vote for Biden, vote for the Democrats, and then would follow the person over to the voting booth and look over their shoulder while they voted. I mean, it's those kinds of things. And then the other, like changing, not reviewing signatures, changing dates, other types of things that she lays out in her affidavit. I think systemic's a good word. Yeah.
David, how can people follow go to your site, follow the case, your Twitter, Parler, all of that, but also where does this head? We got a couple minutes. Where does this head next? Walk us through the process.
Sure. They can go to our website, greatlakesjc.org, and we have a Twitter account for Great Lakes Justice Center, and you can keep up on what's going on. But what's going to happen now is we are asking right now for the judge to issue an injunction to stop the certification of the election so that an audit can occur. Once the certification occurs, no audit can happen. And so then the only thing that can happen is a recount, which is kind of meaningless in a lot of ways because all the bad ballots and fraudulent ballots will be recounted. What's the point of that? So we're asking for this injunction to issue. Now, if the judge, he's going to issue an opinion and order, he told us tomorrow at noon. And then if he rules against us, we will immediately appeal to our Court of Appeals and ask for the same relief in our Court of Appeals on emergency motions, and we'll see what the Court of Appeals does with it. I'm sure if the judge rules our way, the other side's going to appeal immediately. I mean, either way, this is going to move up in our courts here in Michigan, and I fully expect it'll end up at our Supreme Court.
How real quickly, you're asking, I just want to go back through this. You're asking for an injunction to do what? To stop what?
To stop the certification. In Michigan, we have, every county has what's called a board of canvassers, and they certify the election results, and then that gets sent up to the state. There are 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats on these boards by state law. So we're asking the judge to order that board of canvassers may not certify the election results until our audit is completed. So that's the key component of what we're asking for.
Last thing, parts of these affidavits have actually also been taken up and are in the federal case that the campaign is doing. Is that my understanding? You're 2 separate cases. You're in state court, they're in federal court. But are they relying also upon some of the affidavits that you filed?
Yeah, that's been kind of a misconception. I've seen it on a few places around the country that we're working for the Trump campaign or that we're being paid by President Trump or the GOP or things like that. We aren't. We're a private 501c3 organization. We represent a couple of concerned voters in Wayne County. And so we're not tied in directly. I mean, obviously what we're doing could benefit President Trump. I mean, obviously that's true. But we're a 501c3. We cannot be tied in with any political party or stance or anything like that. So we just want to make that clear to people. I understand that in the federal filing, they did attach a copy of our complaint and the affidavits. But again, all of our stuff is out there. It's in the public domain. Anybody can use it for whatever they want to use it for. We're happy to have people use it.
We got to bounce. You have a Parler account also?
We don't yet. We will soon.
Okay, thank you. David Kallman. It's David versus Goliath. He's got 5 stones. Only took David, the original, to use 1. We'll see how many Brother Kallman needs. You're a hero, sir. Rudy Giuliani next. It's a day of heroes here on War Room Pandemic.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to the War Room and our second lineup of heroes. We have now Mayor Rudy Giuliani from formerly ran the Southern District in New York in the days when he used to run properly, and that is when he put down the 5 families, when he put down all the Wall Street mob that ran that, Mike Milken, Ivan Boesky, all that crowd. And he's now at the tip of the spear in this effort to try to stop Biden and the Democrats and Soros and the progressive left from stealing an overwhelming victory of President Trump. And I do not care if the social media oligarchs in Silicon Valley don't like that. That is a reality. That's reality. And we see in Michigan, an American hero, David Kallman, runs a little 501c3 to protect the right to life, the Constitution, the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, and he's got a major lawsuit. And, hey, just go in and listen yesterday during the hearing. Biden's team's not ready for it. They're kind of in the mumble tank, whining. Here's what they're whining about. Well, it's really going to be hard to certify it because of time. Tough. All legal votes count, no illegal votes count. Very simple. You got to throw them out by the palletful, just like you rolled them into Michigan by the vanful. They got to be thrown out by the vanful, right? We're not going to do a recount of just the ballots there. These ballots are illegal, uncertifiable, no chain of custody. I want to bring in, by the way, Mayor, this David Kallman is like from Central Casting. It's like a Norman Rockwell meets John Ford meets It's a Wonderful Life. I mean, yeah, it's incredible. Another great,
first time. And
another
then he
great
sent me his
find.
lawsuit. I thought I was going to get like a 3-page something or other. It's a novel. It's a definite novel with all, and he's got all the affidavits in there, all the evidence that we don't have. There's no evidence of fraud. There's no evidence of fraud. Hey, how about you read this? Oh, I'm sorry. This is too long for Pelosi to read.
Okay, but give us the big pic. Give us the big picture here. We want to see because, yeah, we don't want to talk about a hand recount in Georgia. They talk about it in Arizona. It's coming down to the conclusion probably today. We're going to try to get Boris Epstein on in Arizona in the second hour. But you just don't want to recount, illegal ballots. Walk us through you're the president's lawyer. You're the chief strategist on this legally. Where are we? How does Pennsylvania tie to Michigan? How does it tie to Georgia? And where is I know you're working 24/7, Mayor, and I don't mean to bug you, but where's our lawsuit in Georgia? So just walk us through strategically where we are, how they tie together, and where we're going to fight on other fronts.
Well, here's the common crime committed by the Democrats. And then there are many others that vary state by state, some worse than others. The one that's consistent, however, is that they did not allow Republicans to observe the mail-in ballots. They excluded Republicans in large numbers in Philadelphia, in Pittsburgh, in Detroit, in Milwaukee, in Atlanta, in Las Vegas, in Phoenix, Arizona. Each one of those places, there were about 10, Republicans were excluded from viewing the mail-in ballots. Now, in each state, that alone renders the ballot an unlawful vote. So the minute you get up in numbers, since these states were very close, and these ballots came from the corrupt big city machines, it's going to turn the election. You take right now the Pennsylvania case that started with 135,000 is now up to 662,000 ballots that were illegally cast in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. That would probably, once you take those out, would probably put Trump ahead by a couple 100,000, which is probably still less than he actually won the state by. Remember, he was up by 700,000 to 800,000 before they started counting all these fraudulent ballots. In Detroit, it's very similar, except there are a couple of more crimes that were committed in Detroit in addition. So in Detroit, they shut the Republicans out. Yes, they did that. And then when the Republicans went home thinking the ballot counting was over for the night, some of the Democrats stayed behind, but so did the subcontractors that were working. This is how we know this. And they brought in 100,000 ballots, completely helter-skelter, not in any kind of real official box or official casing. They threw them on a table, and they started counting them furiously. And we have witnesses, both in the Kallman case and the federal case, that the Democrats told the subcontractors, we never expected them to be ahead by that much, meaning Trump, who was ahead by 300,000 in Michigan. They thought they'd have to make up about 50 to 100,000 votes. So when they finished the night, they were still 70, 80,000 votes short. So they had to bring in ballots. these trucks pull up with out-of-state licenses. They bring them in the back door. They stick them on a table, and they start counting them. And the witnesses who were there, of which we have 2 by affidavit and 2 that are going to do affidavits, and a 5th one who's very, very nervous and very reluctant to testify. But what they say is they just added 100,000 ballots to Biden. Every vote was for Biden. There was nobody else on the ballot. It was quite obvious these were completely fraudulent ballots. Everybody knew it.
Hang on, hang on a second. This is the grassy knoll, right? I mean, did these people at the time go immediately to Republican officials and tell them that this was happening? Because now you got vans rolling up, and with physical instead of computer systems, you got vans rolling up in the back. Did these eyewitnesses will say that, but did they also go up the chain of command and tell people? And then, because then you got a process that you've got, I don't know, dozens or hundreds of people that are involved in this on the other side. Is this going to all hang together? Because we're burning daylight, right, on these suits. So is this going to hang together? And are these affidavits going to be as tough as the affidavit that Kallman has in Michigan State Court?
This is a Kallman affidavit. It's by a woman who worked for Dominion. No, she didn't go to the Republicans because she wasn't working for the Republicans. She went to her supervisors and was basically told that it's none of their business. And then she went to the FBI. She reported it to the FBI, and they said they'd get back to her. Well, you know what the answer to that is, right? They haven't gotten back to her. So this is not a Republican. The Republicans were basically out of the room at this point. They had organized it so these ballots had come in when the Republicans had gone home for the night, thinking the counting was over. And then all of a sudden, lo and behold, 100,000 ballots.
Do we have this is the whole thing of both Michigan and Wisconsin, that the president talks at 2:30, everybody wraps up at 3, everybody goes home thinking the thing will resume in the morning, and they come back and they flooded the zone with massive amounts of Biden ballots between that time, I think, of 4:35 in the morning and 5:30 or 6. But do you have people now? And is the Trump look? I know what Kallman's doing. He runs a little 501c3. What is the Trump campaign doing? The Trump campaign is supposed to have all these monies, all these great lawyers, all these guys running around that can get affidavits. Is the Trump campaign interviewing people that guys are going to sit there and go, "We were told to go home. We were told that was going to stand down." And the Republican Party and the apparatus.
In that case, we already have that. We have about 40 or 50 witnesses. We've got about 30 affidavits. I'm quite.
So I just want to, hang on. I just want to tie when Kayleigh McEnany's up there with the 200 affidavits and banging on the podium, which I love, right? Bringing the heat. That ties to the Michigan and the Pennsylvania. People should understand that these are inextricably linked.
I would say half of them come out of Pennsylvania or Michigan.
Okay.
Because that's where we had a tremendous amount of evidence. When you put Kallman's evidence together with ours, it's very, very powerful. Basically, our evidence are the Republican poll watchers. Their evidence is more independent people. So in some senses, their evidence is even more credible. Okay, so look, Kallman has said tomorrow the judge is going to rule, at the state judge at the district level is going to rule at noon about, because he's asked for, he's shocked them yesterday asking for a results audit, not a process audit, and to shut down the certification. They will not be certified at the district level. And the audience should understand, the Biden lawyers were not ready for this. They started whining, and we've said, write this thing down in your day book, certification. These votes can't be certified. You can't have slates of electors. If you can't have slates of electors, it's not the end of the world. It goes to the House of Representatives where Donald J. Trump will win. But I want to go back. Is the process for your first stage at the federal court in Michigan and in Pennsylvania, is that going to be tomorrow, the next day? Because we understand it's got to go to it's going to be appealed by both sides and then kicked up ultimately, I think, to the Supreme Court. What's the status in Michigan right now and in Pennsylvania? In Pennsylvania, the judge wants to set a hearing for early next week. He's been in contact with the lawyers. They're working on, exchanging documents. And then what the judge would then next have to do is have a hearing and have some or all of these witnesses testify. I would imagine if I were the judge, I'd have representative witnesses testify and then stipulate as to the rest so you could get it done quickly. But it's up to the judge.
But why do we? Okay, no, just I'm throwing out to. Why do we want it done quickly? Why don't we have all the witnesses? Let's have like 1,000, right? Remember,
because
time is our.
Because you want him to rule. You want him to rule that they're not to be certified because they're going to appeal it, and you want to get this done. You want to make an effort to get it done before.
But okay, we got to take a short commercial break. But you can't certify while you're in federal court, correct? They can't actually certify this while you're in federal court. Anyway, let's get that answer on the other side. We'll leave them hanging. We'll do some good radio here, good TV. Mayor Rudy Giuliani will join us when we return after a short commercial break.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to War Room Pandemic. We're in the nation's capital. We've got America's Mayor Rudy Giuliani, who is the overall head of the, no matter what you hear in the leaks, remember, Morning Joe's in meltdown. They're all in meltdown. They're not winning in court. They have they're in the mumble tank when they're in this. You just listen. Go and listen to the thing yesterday. Play. We'll put it up on the site. Go listen to it with your own ears. Hear what the Biden defense team is saying. And the reason is, Crazy Rudy, right, has got him on the run. So just before we finish with Pennsylvania and go to Georgia, is they can't certify, though, while you're in federal court. Is that correct? Or if we don't get an injunction, can they continue and they can try to force through a certification? Because Pennsylvania, I think, is the end of also the 30th, 23rd of the month?
23rd is correct.
23rd is Pennsylvania. Clock would be ticking.
Probably is.
So, Mayor,
I mean, we will get an injunction because it's safer to get an injunction. But, I mean, they shouldn't certify when the case is still being litigated in court. But it's much safer.
Well,
to get an injunction.
shouldn't is not. Are we gonna? Anyway, I'm sure you're gonna get into that process. But this is, remember.
Well, we asked for an
certify
injunction in the lawsuit.
Yeah. Okay, fine. I know that. I just want to make sure that next week is. You think it's next Monday or Tuesday when actually the hearing takes place?
I think the hearing will have to take place next week. Sure, as the first couple of witnesses have to be called, and
let's go to
have them testify.
Rudy, you've never let me down when you tell me something's going to happen. And you've been telling me that we got a big lawsuit in Georgia, and it's not. They're already, the Republican establishment on there is crumbling. They've already agreed to a hand recount, which won't finish, I think, to the 30th of November. But we're not in the recount business. We're in to throw these illegal ballots out by the bushelful, by the white vanful, by the tens and hundreds of thousands. So, because if they're illegal, they can't count. So, Mayor, tell us what's going on in Georgia. You got Linwood. You've got one of your best assets down there on the ground working on this case. What's the case you're going to make in Georgia, and when's it going to come out?
Well, very similar. In Georgia, you had 3 different locations all around Atlanta in which Republicans were excluded, in most cases kept completely out of the center, while the ballots were being counted, while the mail order ballots were being counted. Every once in a while, somebody would be let in, and then they'd be thrown out after a short period of time. The law of Georgia, very similar to the laws in the other places, requires that these ballots be carefully observed by both sides. They weren't. And it's just a question now of what's the number in Georgia. We have 14, 15 witnesses who can testify to this. That number will grow. And remember, we only have to overcome 14,000 there. So I would expect we're going to be more in the 40 or 50,000 range when we get down to actually counting. So that's another one where we should be able to get into a situation where the vote cannot be certified by the legislature unless they want to penalize them by removing those votes, that number of votes, from the count in Atlanta.
Mayor, it's Jack Maxey. I wanted to go back to what Attorney Lynn Wood put out this morning, which was a consent decree that occurred in Georgia back in the spring. And essentially it was to correct some errors on the part of county clerks and voting polling places around the state where they were not checking the signatures on mail-in ballots and comparing them to the signatures in their systems. And this consent decree is quite clear, and it says that the parties agree that the guidance in paragraph 3A shall be issued in advance of all statewide elections in 2020, including the March 24, 2020 presidential primary elections and the general election in November 3rd. This lays out a very detailed methodology for them to accept these signatures, requires that the signature on the envelope be compared to each signature that they have in their system, and that all parties present have the ability to argue over those signatures, etc. It doesn't seem that this was done anywhere in the state of Georgia that we can see, and certainly not in Atlanta around Fulton County. This seems to me to be a direct violation to a court decree, and you now have the Secretary of State Raffensperger, in his official capacity as a Secretary of State, was supposed to issue this order to each and every county in the state. So I don't see how he could possibly certify this election when his own order was violated in multiple locations.
It would seem to me there's a contempt proceeding in order there before you even get to that. Similarly, in Pennsylvania, Justice Alito required them to put aside all ballots that came in after November 3rd. And they didn't put them aside. What they did instead was they changed the dates and predated them to November 2nd and November 3rd. So we've got a couple of contempt proceedings that would be attendant to this. But basically what we want to do is get the record out there in the 10 states in which they didn't allow Republicans to observe, to get the record out there so that the Supreme Court has an entire case to take. And I think when we're finished, we'll have 10 states, all of which have a big city, crooked Democrat machine. And they relied on that Democrat machine to just print up ballots when necessary. That's how they won. That's how you wipe out an 800,000 point lead the night of the election. I mean, that was a tough job because they were planning on stealing maybe the usual 50 or 100,000 they steal in Philadelphia in every major election. But they weren't counting on having to overcome 750,000 votes.
Is Dominion Systems going to be in part of the pleadings in Georgia? And is that going to be? I understand you've got a part of it in Michigan, but is that going to be a more of a central part of your thesis in Georgia, or where's Dominion Systems? You know, we're hearing a lot about that. We're going to do some more on that.
Dominion strangely was doing the vote machines in Georgia. I say strangely because it's not a very experienced company. It's a foreign company. It's a foreign company that uses foreign parts, and it doesn't have a really strong, robust experience in the United States. Any place where it was selected, one has to question why was it selected. Now, in the case of Georgia, there's a connection between the governor and either one of the principals for Dominion or the guy who's the lobbyist. That guy worked for the governor of Georgia. I don't know if that has something to do with that system being in Georgia, but it's a very, very poor system.
No conspiracy, but no coincidences.
It's also a foreign company. It's a Canadian company that has Venezuelan money in it. And its genesis goes back to helping Chavez get elected and Maduro. And they're working in Georgia? Sounds a little strange to me.
Well, the Texas report, Texas went through and eviscerated Dominion. We'll put that back up, and maybe we'll get the Texas guys there. Texas did a complete analysis, and they failed in every different aspect. It's stunning, given what Texas did in an independent assessment. This could be that any election official could. And here's what I don't think we get, Mayor. Why is the Lieutenant Governor of Georgia and the Secretary of State? Secretary of State says, "Yeah, you've had some illegal voting." But it's it's just some illegal voting. I don't know if it's going to be a problem. Why are they taking the party line that there's nothing to see here. And Linwood and Rudy are just being bothersome. Why the elected officials saying, hey, you guys are whining because particularly the two U.S. senator or the two Senator Perdue and Senator Loeffler, that you're whining because you didn't win outright. What's happening with that?
Maybe they should be yelling at the lieutenant governor and the governor since they didn't win outright. I mean, they really somebody's got to question the governor on how we end up selecting Dominion for the state of to the state of Georgia when it's not an American company. It has foreign parts, including Chinese parts in it, and it reports its results to another foreign company that does a lot of the calculations. And we're looking into its provenance, where it comes from, and it comes from a company that did the votes for Maduro and Chavez, and one of their top people also is connected to Antifa, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I
it's
think
a very
that's
strange organization.
Yeah.
So maybe they're very defensive about their selection of Dominion. Yeah. I would be.
So, Mayor, the last thing, our ever vigilant engine room in the war room is bugging us because they're saying, you got America's mayor here, the criminality of voter fraud, the criminality of voting. And now you got a criminal referral to the Justice Department in Nevada. Barr has finally woken up, and I think they're looking at criminal things in Pennsylvania. Why is this not the forefront of the Trump campaign and others saying, hey, there are criminal penalties for this, particularly long-term prison sentence felonies, if you're part of not just illegally voting, but if you're part of a voter fraud thing, it's some sort of state government apparatus, and it's all going to come out. We're going to be relentless. We're going to get to the bottom of this. Why are you guys not leading enough with the big club, which is come forward now, or you're going to be wrapped up in a major criminal investigation? Why are you guys playing too nice on that?
Well, I don't think that's our option. That's up to the FBI. I don't know why the FBI hasn't been in this for 6 months. On the other hand, I'm not sure I want the FBI interviewing anybody. Look at that postal agent that went out to Erie, Pennsylvania, to try to get the postal worker to recant his testimony. And instead, he made a fool out of himself because the guy who was a witness wired himself with the help of Veritas and caught the postal inspector agent threatening him with losing his job, threatening him with having a lot of problems, threatening him with disappointing a lot of senators. Why is the postal agent trying to change his testimony? So I don't know. Honestly, I hate to say this. I don't know who to trust. The FBI, for example, Ms. Carmona, who is another one of Kallman's witnesses who you may want to put on, she is the one who saw the 100,000 votes come in and the all Biden votes to catch up. Well, she reported it to the FBI. And they said they'd be right back to her. That's 4 days ago. 4 days is an eternity in an investigation like this. If I were running that investigation, I'd have been back to her in less than an hour. And by now, I'd have somebody indicted.
Yeah, we got to bounce. We understand, but
manana, the way I look at it, the best explanation I have for it is these people are on manana time, and I'm on Trump time. A little different, but they're very frustrating, including within his own legal team in his campaign. The mere fact that they weren't prepared for this is an outrage. You know that, Steve. You and I talked about it. Every one of these documents I'm putting together now, these all should have been ready. All you had to do is how much anticipation was there? I mean, I'm very, very frustrated, but it doesn't stop me from going after them 24 hours a day. And most of these lawsuits wouldn't be filed if I weren't yelling and screaming and doing my own intimidation. I mean, they want to go over these lawsuits for 3 weeks.
You've got the Daily Show on WABC every day at 3. You've also, your podcast is going to be out when? Tomorrow on Friday? You post your podcast when?
Yeah, I got one coming out. It came out last night. It's available today. It's a path to victory. It shows how if you turn 3 states, he's ahead. And all those states
we got to bounce.
They're within reach.
We'll push it out hard. Know you're doing another podcast
Okay,
today.
we
Mayor
can talk
Rudy
about
Giuliani.
that.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Georgia today. We're going to go back to Georgia right now.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back. We were going to have McCabe from Veritas in here. Rudy teed us up for a perfect segue about the postal worker. We're going to try to. We've had to reorganize a little bit. We're going to try to get on top of that. Now I want to go to Georgia, in Garland. Is it Favorito? Garland?
Yeah, that's right, Steve. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be on your show. I've admired your work for years, even before Trump was ever elected. So thank you very much for having me on.
I'd like to introduce Garland as my new agent. No, thank you, Garland. Really appreciate it. Did a great job on John Frederick. John Frederick's a huge promoter. Now, listen, explain what your organization is in Georgia, and then I want to get into this Dominion Systems, because a lot of rumors bouncing around, and now they look like they're going to be a major part of this suit that's going to be dropped in federal court today by the one and only Lynn, who's fantastic, right? So walk us through exactly who you are, what's the organization, and then get into the Dominion of it.
Glad to. So I am a career information technology professional. I have a wide variety of experience that I won't bore you with right now. And then that was about a 40-year career. And right now I am, for the last 16 years, I co-founded an organization called Voter GA. That stands for Voters Organized for Trusted Election Results in Georgia, which is exactly what we don't have right now. So we've been fighting this battle for over 18 years, trying to get verifiable, auditable, and recount-capable systems in Georgia. Ever since 2002, we were explaining that to the original Secretary of State who brought these in, the original system, is Kathy Cox, that they were not verifiable, auditable, or recount-capable. Last year, the U.S. District Court agreed with what I said back in 2002, and they ruled them unconstitutional and banned our old Diebold paperless systems. And the Secretary of State then embarked on this project to bring in a new system, but it turns out that this system is equally as unverifiable and not auditable or recount capable. It has all the same similar flaws to the old system.
So how did you select it, and particularly Republicans? You got a Republican governor, Republican Secretary of State, Republican Lieutenant Governor. How did this happen, and what's the flaws in this Dominion system that's going to come up and be such a big deal now?
Yeah, it's amazing, Steve. It's a long story. I'll try to shorten it as much as I can. But hundreds of people testified to the legislature and to the Voting System Commission. Specifically, they did not want this type of system. One of the flaws in the Dominion system is that it is a bar-coded voting system. So it puts the votes into a barcode that you cannot verify. So if you cast your vote and it'll on the summary sheet and it says Trump, the system could record it for Biden, and no one in the state of Georgia would ever know. We recommended other systems that you do not have barcodes for votes, but the Secretary of State and the Georgia legislature, which quite frankly are a bunch of rhino Republicans for the most part, decided to go ahead and purchase this system at a cost of $300 million to the taxpayers over the next 10 years. This system is, in fact, fundamentally flawed. And as you said, you mentioned Texas, that has already, they've already pointed out some of the security flaws, but also Colorado has banned the exact system that we are using here in Georgia, and they will not be using that anymore after this year.
Okay, Garland, we've got about 2 minutes left. Explain to the audience why this is going to be a big deal right now, not for some future, election, right now, and why it's going to be in a central part of the lawsuit that's going to get filed today, and why it's more than just a wild goose chase. It's actually meaningful.
Yes, so I believe, in addition to the mail-in issue that you've already discussed, I think there's a tremendous chance of this having electronic voting fraud, particularly in Fulton County. I have an affidavit that I've submitted, and that affidavit showed I witnessed the Biden figures going up by 20,000 votes when they were loading up mail-in ballots, while Trump's figures went down by 1,000. That is just not technically possible. There's some type of fraud there. So the good thing about this recount, which is now going to be a full hand recount, is that it will identify any kind of electronic fraud, even though it does not identify the mail-in fraud. So I think the Secretary actually took a step in the right direction compared to existing law, which basically a recount's only going to rescan the barcode, which you can't tell what's in it anyway.
So in 60 seconds, why, particularly because the mainstream media watches this show very closely, the president's opposition watches closely, why do you not have a tinfoil hat on? Just explain to the audience why this is meaningful and it's going to be real now, and what's going to be the outcome.
Okay, so thank you, Steve. So over the course of this 18 years, Voter GA is a completely nonpartisan organization. We have as many progressives as we do staunch conservatives. They all want the same thing. They want honest elections. And they, quite frankly, most of us, regardless of our political beliefs, we are fighting the establishment who seems to want this type of unverifiable system. So my argument back would be on that would be, look at our background. We have thousands of people in our organization, and they literally span the political spectrum, from libertarians to progressives to conservatives. So I think that we're not a partisan organization by any means.
Okay, Garland, how do people get more information? Do you have a Twitter handle? Do you have a website to go to? People can pile in today and see it.
Yes,
we got about 30 seconds.
Yes, thank you, Steve. voterga.org. That's one way to do it. If you're still haven't gotten off Facebook and Twitter yet, you can find Voter GA on Facebook, and you can also go to follow me on Twitter at Voter GA.
Great. Next decade, when we're back on, we'll follow you on those things. Thank you, Garland. Is it Favorito? Thank you very much. We look forward to having you back on over the weekend, sir. Thank you. Great work.
Thank you, Steve. Glad to do it.
Another guy from Central Casting, another guy from It's a Wonderful Life, representing libertarians, progressives. Just that's that kind of Yankee stock, good citizen, right? Good citizen. Okay, a short break. Ken Blackwell is going to join us next. Also going to go back out to Arizona, Pennsylvania, all of it, and Georgia, next hour.